everybody. Again, as Eric said, my name is James Berry, and I will be showing you what's new in version 6. So what is new in version 6? For those of you who have been using Forecast Pro before in version 5, version 4, version 3, the biggest change that you'll notice when you first open the application is the new user interface. We have changed the interface dramatically from the previous versions of the software and trying to improve it and make it a little bit better. We've also added a whole bunch of new features that we will go over. We've included the ability to show up to 5 graphs at a time with our new viewing engine. It also allows us to see other reports multiple ways and in multiple places. Within the global reports themselves, we have added additional sorting and heat maps with these, so we can customize our global reports and make them much more colorful. So in terms of sorting them based off numeric values, but also based off of color values, similar to what you would see in Excel. We've made improvements to the override grid itself. So within the overrides, we've added more features to make overriding easier as well as more visually appealing. And then the big change in terms of new features that we have added is this Excel-based overrides and collaboration. Now this is a much larger expansion into the functionality built within Forecast Pro. And as such, we're just gonna really touch on it briefly today. But I did want to point out that this Friday, we are also running a second webinar that's going to deep dive into the Excel-based collaboration. So I would highly recommend, if that's something you're interested in, to please sign up for the Friday webinar as well. Just like today, we're running it twice in the morning and in the afternoon US time so that we can line up with both Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East for the morning time, and then the rest of North and South America here in the afternoon to make it a little bit more conducive for those times. So again, we're going to go over certain of these different new features together, but we're going to save the real deep dive for the Excel collaboration until our webinar that we will see on Friday. So hopefully I will see all of you there as well. So in terms of what we're going to see first, the biggest change that you'll notice between the two products is the interface and how we have changed it. We have made it much more Microsoft Office-like. So we wanted to make sure that Forecast Pro acts like other business tools that you're used to using. And we know that everybody has access to Office and Word and Excel and PowerPoint, et cetera. And so we wanted to make Forecast Pro's interface match that. And that includes having a ribbon menu up at the top with multiple tabs for options and much more legible icons. So what do I mean by this? Well, if we go ahead and take a look at the current version of Forecast Pro, the one that most of you have probably familiar with, we have what we call sort of our colored marble interface, where up along the top, we have these different color-coded icons. The different colors represent different functions. And we only have a single row of all of these, and you can't really tell what any of these are unless you hover over them. And so it's a little bit difficult to use. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to mimic what we see in Office. And so here in our new version of Forecast Pro, we're going to mimic what we see here in Office, where we have a ribbon menu up at the top. We have multiple tabs allowing you to see different information and much larger icons available to you with wording underneath them that makes it more clear what these icons do. So let's go ahead and take a look at that here in Forecast Pro. So when you start up the new application, it starts up just like you would in an Office product. We have a home screen where we can create new products. We have information about the tutorials and reference manuals, as well as a list of all of our projects that we have worked on up until this point. So I'm going to open up my webinar project right here and bring up my data. So this will bring up one of my existing projects that I've been working on. You can see here our new interface in version 6 mimics what we just saw in Excel. Up along the top, we have our ribbon menu where we have multiple tabs allowing us to see changes. We have much larger and more detailed icons that allow you to see what it is that we're actually working on. So we have been trying to mimic that. We also have a home tab, just like you would see in all of the Office products, that have the commonly used features on the main tab here. Now, one slight difference between us and Office products is in the Office products, you can actually customize here what's in each of the different ribbons. We've kind of locked these down. If you want to do customization, we have the quick access toolbar up here. So just like in any of the Office products, we have this quick access and we can turn on or off some of the different features so we can have them always available to us. We can do the same thing here in Forecast Pro, where any of the common features we can add up here to our quick access toolbar and have them show up at the top, regardless of which tab we have clicked on. So we can customize up here, allowing you to have your commonly used features. The other thing you'll notice in this new design that we have in the user interface is that we have moved front and center what we now call layouts. So these are the replacement for bookmarks. So if you had been using TRAC version 5, you had bookmarks available to you. These are the same thing. We've just relabeled them layouts. One of the things that we thought folks were getting a little confused of what a bookmark meant, and really we thought layouts was a better description of what the functionality does, where it actually takes a screenshot of what you're doing so it remembers what windows you had open, how you had them formatted, and everything that goes along with that. We wanted to make it more pronounced so people would use these more, so they're right here, the first thing you see on the home screen. They also default to existing up here on the quick access toolbar, so you always have access to your layouts. If you are upgrading from version 3, version 4, version 5 into version 6, a question that came up earlier today in the seminar when we did it earlier was, is it easy to upgrade? And the answer is yes. Any of the work that you have done in these earlier versions, if you save your project and open them in V6, all of that information will come along, all of your data, all your settings, all your formats, and if you had set up bookmarks, they will also populate the layouts right here, so they will populate. So everything is forward compatible. If you have an older version of the software, open it up in the new version and it will be saved and we can work on it here. Just a quick side note about that, it is not backwards compatible in that if I create a project in version 6, I cannot open it in version 5. It doesn't go backwards, it just goes forwards. A couple of other interface changes. We have kept the right mouse click. So if you are used to right mouse clicking and getting our context menu anywhere, that is still available. I can right click on any of these reports to get our context menus up for us. However, we're trying to move the software forward in the interface. So we have added to the top of each of these windows, again, what we call our hamburger menu. That actually is the name. If you're used to using sort of apps on your phone or your tablet, they have these kind of menus, which will also bring up the settings and the customization. So we're trying to make the program a bit more touch-friendly as that happens. Also, right-clicking on the hierarchy, one of the main reasons you would do that would be for the modeling, which is kind of buried in all these sub-menus, and different ones have different sub-menus. We have tried to unify that, and there is now a forecasting tab. So all of the modeling information is up here on the tab. So you no longer have to right click and drill into menus. You can access it directly from the forecasting tab. So as I go to different items, I can apply different models much more quickly. And again, they are all clearly labeled with their icons, so it's much easier to find, and they're all in one place without having to drill into a whole bunch of menus and sub-menus to find them. So again, the main interface is to bring it more up to date and in line with the kind of products that you're used to using, like Office, and so you're much more in tune with how that works. Now, that's the interface. What about some of the new features that are available in the tool? So some of the main features that you'll see here inside Forecast Pro are different sorting and heat map options for our global reports, support for up to 5 graphs at a time, as well as improvements with working in the override grid. So these are some of the new features that we have added beyond just the interface. So let's go ahead and take a look at these in the tool itself. So the first thing we talked about is our new sorting and heat map options. So what I have up here is my exception report for tracking forecast accuracy. You can see we can turn on our filters. You can get to it through here, through the hamburger menu, or once again, you can turn it on by right-clicking, just like in the old versions. If I wanted to filter any of these reports, you can see I can still sort largest to smallest or smallest to largest, but I can also add these color-coded heat maps onto them, similar to what we would see in Excel. And when I do that, you can now see, I'm gonna actually move this down a little bit, sorry. And we can come over here and you can see it's now sorted by the worst to the best. So it kind of is shaded this way. And we can pick different colorways if we wanted to for these. So I could do, for instance, red, green, yellow, and you'll see this will now sort through 3 colors as we get closer to better options. Also, what was asked in the earlier webinar was, can we add these to multiple columns? And the answer is yes, of course we can. So if I came over here to this one, I could actually turn on the same red, green, yellow here, and you will see we'll add a second heat map for this column. Again, they're sorted differently, so the options will appear differently. So I have this ability to come in and both sort my columns like I would before, as well as the ability to come in and add these heat maps to multiple columns within a single report. Okay. Some other options that we have available to us here in the tool is we can actually now, when it comes to the reporting, so if I come over to my reports tab, as you can see, we've actually broken up, for instance, the exception reports. So I can open multiple at the same time. So for instance, if I come in and turn on my waterfall report over here, I can now have both exception reports open at the same time. And once again, if I wanted to, I could add a heat map here. Just do this one, and it would show up down here as well. So I can now have multiple reports at the same time, and just as before, these reports are navigable, so I can jump to any of these items on any of these reports as I work through the different reports here. One of the other things that you will see in our program is the ability to resize information. Resize the windows when I have them open. Now, in version 5 and version 4, if I opened more windows in the tool, it automatically would resize them to make sure they were all evenly spaced, something that we call auto-arranging. In the new version of the software, if we actually shrink some of these, if there's areas over here and I open, for instance, a third window, if I reopen my graph up here, you'll see it will squeeze it in wherever it can. Now we can still use the old formatting that we used in version 4 and version 5. That's what we call auto-arranging. We've added this button back so that we can keep doing the same sort of, oh, I want 3 windows open at the same time whenever I have them. But if I don't want to, I can now resize these much more easily and have our windows come in and open just in the space that's available to me. So we'll try to resize and make everything. So we don't have to really be stuck with these kind of half, thirds, or quarters that we used to do in the old system. We can do that, but we're giving you a bit more flexibility when coming up with how this information is set and how we might want to arrange our screen to see all of the information that we're looking at. Okay? Now, what else have we added here? Now you'll notice I can have multiple windows open at the same time. I can also have multiple graphs open. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up a layout that just has one graph open. If I wanted to add a second graph, my graph icon now has the ability to add another graph to it. So if I go ahead and do that, you'll see I now have 2 graphs open at the same time. For instance, now why would I want to do this? Well, what if I set this graph to year over year? And you'll see it will stack itself. So now I can see the data both as a time series as well as year over year. So I have the ability to see the data both ways when I have these graphs. I can have up to 5 graphs at a time. I can continue to add graphs up to 5 if you wanted to. Another feature that is coming, I just wanted to point this out. We are hopefully working on an update or sort of a patch to it. And one of the things that we're adding in the next update will be the ability to actually relabel these graphs. So I can actually come in here, and instead of calling this graph 1, we could call this time series graph. Oops, and I can spell it correctly. And we could label this one as year over year graph. So we will have the ability to label these graphs. That way I can quickly and easily pull them whenever I see the information available to me. So if I come over here and I close this, if I were to come over and say open the overrides, I'd then be able to pull one of these graphs in here, and you can see it says year over year graph. So I have the ability to see that information both ways. So I can quickly and easily access those pieces of information as we work on them. So I have this ability to have multiple graphs. I have the ability to have multiple windows and see everything the way that I'm looking at it. So that's an improvement in the graph interface. What about with the override grid itself? So I'm going to make the graph a little bit smaller, make our graph window a little bit bigger. The first thing you'll notice on the new override window is these quarterly and yearly totals that I have available to me. We now have the ability to add quarterly and annual totals into the override grid itself. You can see they pop up here. When I click over here, I can see the end of 2020. I can also see 2021. This covers both the forecast period, and if I were to turn on the time series data and scroll over to the history, you can see we have the quarterly and annual totals available to us. So these are dynamic fields that will be generated for us as we're looking in the override grid. This also continues into the global reports itself. So I'm going to jump to another layout over here, and I'm going to show you the item report, where we also now have the ability, if I go up to the settings here in the override report, to turn on row totals, column totals, and yearly totals. I'm going to row and yearly totals on here. I can also do columns. I'll turn that on as well. And when we come over here, you can now see in the report, there is now a 2020 total because that's what I have in here. You can also see a grand total for the entire row that we're looking at over here. And if I were to, this thing is on here, hold on one second. Sorry about that. The menu for the meeting is there. Down here at the bottom, we have a grand total for us as well. So I'm able to turn those on. So I can turn on these annual totals, row totals, and column totals in any of the global reports as well. And just like in the other version of the software, here in our status bar, we do show, as you select a range of data, we do also still show sums and counts and averages. So if you wanted to do it for a subset of data, just like you would in Excel, it will still show you that information down below. Okay, so that kind of subtotals, both for quarterly, annual, columns, and rows, have been expanded into a lot of our reports. If I go back to my overrides, come back here, sort of basic, some of the other things that we have added is the ability to see data in addition to our standard year over year that you would have seen in version 4 and version 5. We have now color-coded the years, so you can actually see the data much more easily. So now when we look at this data, if I come all the way to here or something with a few years of history, you'll see we're now color coding it. One of the requests from some of our users was the ability to come in here and actually say, okay, which year was this? Well, this is 2017 is in purple, 2018 is in green, 2019 here is in this kind of tan color, and the blue is 2020. So I can easily see that. We've also synchronized the colors down here in the graph. So if I switch back to year over year, you can see it synchronizing the colors here as well. So we've tried to synchronize these two in a bit more of an obvious way so you can see that information as we go. So again, showing you this ability to have our year over year information, have our quarterly totals, have our yearly totals. We can have all of this information here when we look through all of this, and all this information will be added to the grid, allowing us to help. One final change here with the override grid, I'm just going to turn this off so I have a little bit of space here. One of the other changes is we have improved the ability to make calculations. So if I come in here and add a calculated row, which I'll go ahead and do, one of the key abilities that we have added is the ability now, anytime in the old versions of the software, in version 4, version 5, when you wanted to type in a formula, you had to hit equals, and then you had to type in the name of the row in curved brackets. So for instance, I would have to come in here and say forecast and type it in. In the new version of the software, you can now hit equals and you can now click on different cells and it will automatically fill in what you have clicked on. So just like you would in Excel, when you click, it will actually show the value that you have clicked on. So now you don't have to always constantly type in. I can come in here and say, you know, I want it to equal the statistical plus, oops, got to hit enter over here. So let me come over here, did it wrong. If I want to say equals the stat plus 100, I can get that as well. I can of course copy and paste this across my entire row and put that information here as well. So it's much more click-based. I don't have to keep continually type my formulas in. This is a real huge advantage. I know a lot of folks have been requesting this so that we can actually come in here and now point and click when we're actually doing our formulas. The same thing is true in any of these rows if you do it in the override rows. If I say equals the forecast plus 50, I can put that in the override row as well. And those of you who have done training with me, I actually have to fix that because what did I not do? I did not make a comment, and we'll say added 50 units, because you always want to make comments here. So again, these kinds of improvements in the override grid itself allow us to make changes much more easily. Now, the final change, as I said, we will not cover in any depth, is this new addition of the Excel collaboration piece. As I said, we're going to do an entire seminar on this where we walk through all of the functionality. But this is really a big manager in here that allows us to export the data from Forecast Pro into Excel to allow multiple people to make overrides and then to import it back in here. So beyond just creating those files, this is really a manager where you can do that. We have different templates for how you can export the data. We have the ability to pull it in at different levels of the hierarchy. If you had filters, we can set up how we want to export this data and for date ranges. We can share data in Excel, have folks make changes and bring it back in. And this is something that will allow for much easier collaboration if you have users who are more comfortable working in Excel than they are in Forecast Pro. So again, we have an entire webinar on this on Friday, so I highly recommend you sign up for that to cover this information. So obviously, if I return back to my slides here, this was a brief overview of the new features. If you want to dive in deeper in terms of all the features that I have shown you, the two first places you should start are the Forecast Pro manual and our YouTube page. The Forecast Pro manual, which is a PDF format, has a full tutorial on all of these new features. It is searchable and it covers all of this new information that we have. It's also easily accessible in the program itself. You just go to the Help tab and there is an entire breakdown of the different information, both the user guide, the tutorial, and the statistical reference, which is available directly to you when we make this information. You can also visit our YouTube page, especially now that I know a lot of folks are working from home and they have some time. I do highly encourage you to go to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/forecastpro. We have these webinars as well as a whole bunch of other webinars that we have done, deep dives, as well as quick overviews of all the different parts that are included in Forecast Pro.